Hi, it's Lucy, and today I'm here to do my June wrap-up. Is it a little bit late? Maybe. Am I still doing it? Yes. So, in the month of June, I read 5 books, and I took part in one readathon, the Read Your Gaze readathon, which was put on for Pride. Almost all of the books that I read were like LGBTQIA plus themed. I did do a reading vlog for the Read Your Gaze readathon, but then I didn't like it, so I never posted it, so there's nothing there. I did, in the end, complete 2 of the challenges for that readathon, and then I kind of rolled over the rest of the books into my rest of the month TBR. Quality-wise, for all the books that I read, it was basically the same as last month. I had a couple of 4 stars, a couple of 3.5 stars, and 1 2 star, so it wasn't the greatest reading month quality-wise, and also not quantity-wise, because like I mentioned, I read 5 books, which is actually the least amount of books I've read in a month all year, so yeah, I don't know what's going on really. I mean, I kind of do. I don't know. Am I in a slump? I don't know. I don't really believe in reading slumps, but maybe. But the books that I rated 4 stars, I did really enjoy. Even some of the books that I rated 3.5 stars, I did enjoy them. So there's that. Like I mentioned in all of my wrap-ups, I have timestamps for each book that I mention in the description box. So if you want to know what's coming up, or if you want to skip ahead to any book, those timestamps are down below. And I wanted to talk about one more thing before I get into the books. I wanted to announce that I am now a Book of the Month YA affiliate. So Book of the Month has started to do an exclusive YA only box. So each month you get to pick from 5 books that are YA, and I will go into more detail in a haul video that I will hopefully have coming to you soon. Suddenly I cannot speak, but yeah, so for now, I'm just telling you guys, there's a link down below, so if you've ever been interested in using Book of the Month and you want to help me out a little bit, use the link down below. And I think the page it'll show you, it'll tell you to use the code WOA for your first box for $9.99. Normally it's $14.99, so it's a little bit of a discount. And full disclosure, I do get like a kickback if you use the link to subscribe. So if you're interested, the link is down below, and it'll be linked down below in future videos. So there's that out of the way. Let's get into the books. The first book that I read was It's Not Like It's a Secret by Misa Sugiura. This follows Sana, who's a second-generation Japanese-American girl who has a lot of secrets. Some are small, like how it bothers her when her friends don't invite her to parties, and some are a lot bigger, like the fact that she suspects that her father is having an affair. And then there's the one that she barely even admits to herself, like the fact that she has a crush on her best friend who's a girl. So when Sana and her family move to California, she begins to wonder if it's finally time for her to be honest, especially when she meets an amazing girl that she wants to know more about. Problems arise when their respective friend groups, hers and the girls, don't like each other and kind of clash, and Sana has to deal with that along with her family issues and coming to terms with the fact that she might be a lesbian. I really enjoyed reading this. I've already recommended this even before wrapping it up in my LGBTQ plus recommendations video, so you can check that out, but it's basically what I'm about to say. But yeah, I really enjoyed reading this. It's like a nice quiet read. I really like quiet reads that kind of just follows a character as they discover something about themselves, discover something about other people, and it just follows Sana as she goes through the school year in her new town. One of the big aspects that Sana deals with in the book is the fact that she's a minority. Like I mentioned, she's Japanese American, so she's Asian American, and the town she was living in before they moved to California was pretty small. She was the only Asian person, I think, in the class, is what the book said. And then she moves to the Bay Area, which has a much larger Asian population. And so the book kind of discusses what it's like to go from being the super minority to being not in the minority anymore, and what it's like to go from being the odd one out to blending in more. And Sana herself really appreciates that because she is more of a quiet person, and she doesn't like how she stood out before, so I thought that was really interesting. As you might have guessed, the romance was decently heavy. I don't think it was that heavy, but it was definitely involved in the book. And for the first half of the book, I really liked it. But the second half of the book deals with a lot of common like YA romance tropes, which I wasn't a huge fan of, but one part of the romance that I really liked is that it's an interracial relationship. And like I keep mentioning, the main character is Japanese American and her love interest is Mexican American. And so the book deals a lot with their cultures clashing or just learning about each other's cultures, and it also deals with the fact that people of color can be prejudiced towards other people of color and what that can look like, especially in the context of an interracial relationship. So I really, really appreciated that exploration, because that is not something you really see a lot in YA, or really in anything, honestly. I feel like I can't stress enough how much I liked having the main character really examine her internal prejudices, and I hope it encourages other people who might read it to also examine their own. I also really like that the main character talked to her mom, who was not the most supportive mother figure, I think, but once again, it's more realistic. And even though her mom outwardly shares her prejudices, the main character does challenge them, and even though she doesn't always change her mom's mind, I liked seeing that happen. Symptoms of Being Human by Jeff Garvin. This follows Riley Kavanaugh, who's a gender fluid teen who's only out to their therapist. They're not out to anybody else, and they're struggling with how they're treated by those around them. They deal with a lot of bullying from the students at their school, especially as Riley's dad is a congressman who's running for re-election in a pretty conservative district. And to help deal with all these feelings Riley has running around, and to help with the fact that they feel like they can't really talk to anyone about it, their therapist suggests that they start a blog. They kind of just go into what it's like being a gender fluid teen on the blog, and it kind of gained some traction. And so it's about them dealing with the popularity of the blog, dealing with hiding the fact of who they are basically from everyone around them, and dealing with starting a school where they're not really accepted. It's a lot. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed reading this. You should know before going in that this is not an own voices story. Jeff Garvin is a cis man. As far as I've seen, with the reviews that I've seen, I haven't really seen this posed as bad representation for a gender fluid person. But if you do know of any own voices stories by a gender fluid person, I'd love to read them. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting being in Riley's head. The book seemed well researched. I think I learned a lot about being gender fluid, kind of what it means. I know of the umbrella term of non-binary, but I don't know a lot about specifics of people. This book has a trigger warning for homophobia, transphobia, and sexual assault. So be warned about that going in. I thought Riley's relationship with other characters was kind of the strong point of this book, because I just really like seeing how they related to other characters that were their friends. The way Riley relates to their parents is really interesting, because their parents aren't specifically unsupportive, but Riley still doesn't feel comfortable coming out to them. So it was interesting seeing how all of that played in Riley's head. And yeah, overall, I just really enjoyed this book. And once again, if you like quiet reads, this is a good one, because it really just follows Riley as they start their new school and follows them throughout the school year and writing on this blog. This is kind of an epic love story by Kacen Callendar. This follows Nathan Bird, who's Black and bisexual. He's a film buff and an aspiring screenwriter who doesn't believe in a happy ending after his father died and kind of left his mom alone. So he's tried to play it safe in regards to love, but his best friend turned girlfriend turned best friend again is determined to find him a relationship. And then when Nathan's childhood best friend comes back to town, some things may blossom, and the story just goes on from there. I gave this 3.5 stars. I don't have a super lot to say about this. I enjoyed reading this, but this does feature a lot of cheating. Basically, at one point, every main character cheats on another main character. So if you don't like that, probably beware. But I had fun while reading it, and I thought the characters, for the most part, other than cheating, were written fine, and I thought the writing was fine. Nothing about the story really blew me away, but it was a fun read. And also, one aspect that people may want to know about, the love interest is deaf, and they use a combination of sign language and like lip reading to communicate. There are descriptions of the way he's signing, and it talks about how the other characters have to make sure they can understand them, but it's incredibly normalized. They just like kind of turn to face them so that he can like see their lips. I don't know, I thought that was really interesting. So I really enjoyed that part of the book, and I've never read about a character who was deaf, so that was cool. The Love Interest by Cale Dietrich. This follows a boy who's a nice, which means that he's a spy trained to be the ultimate nice guy and become a love interest for someone who his agency has deemed important. He has to compete with another spy, a bad, who has been trained to be the ultimate bad boy and is also trying to win affection for that same person. The spy who isn't chosen is marked to be killed, so it is in their best interest to work the hardest they can to try and get the person they're assigned to fall in love with them. But things get complicated when Caden starts to have feelings for the bad boy. This was easily the worst book of the month, maybe even the worst book of the year. It was really bad. I don't normally say don't read this book. Actually, I do kind of normally say that, but especially this, don't read it, don't bother. It's not good at all. There is nothing redeemable about this. The premise of the book intrigued me because it seems like it's gonna like subvert tropes, and it's supposed to be some kind of like satire sort of, but it takes itself way too seriously to ever be any kind of satire. The writing and dialogue were so badly written, I couldn't stand it. Nobody would ever speak like this, and just the scenarios that were put up didn't make any sense. And like I said, the book isn't self-aware enough to make it like funny or fun to read. It just comes off as bad writing. I ended up skimming the second half of the book because the first half was really bad, but I wanted to see how it ends, and spoiler, the ending is bad. Any aspect of romance within this book was so rushed. Basically, there are two romances going on. There's the main character with their potential person who they're supposed to be attracting, and then there's the main character with the bad. And both of them were incredibly rushed. The girl that he's supposed to be attracting immediately is in such like with him after not knowing him at all, and it doesn't really make any sense. There's one point that's not related to the romance. There's one point where they literally get jumped and they show up to the girl's house with their parents, and the parents are just fine. They kind of like react a little bit and they're like, oh my god, this is so bad, but they don't call the police or anything. They don't really ask if they're okay. And they're just like, oh, it must be Caden's fault. It's so weird. And then the romance with the main character and the bad guy was just also unbelievable. They spend like 3 nights together and are literally in love. It's just so much. And yeah, I don't want to spend more time talking about this. It was really bad. I don't recommend it. I am sad I read it. And the last book that I read in the month of June was Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. This follows Queenie, a 25-year-old Jamaican British woman living in London and working at a national newspaper who is dealing with a breakup with her longtime boyfriend, and it just kind of follows her after the breakup. I was super hyped for this book because it's about a black woman in her 20s living in a major city, making her way through life. So I expected some relatability here, and there was like a little bit, but it wasn't quite as relatable as I hoped because, to put it simply, Queenie is a mess. I did give this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, but I can definitely tell that this is not a book for everyone. For one, her self-esteem is abysmal. If you don't like reading about like super unlikable or unrelatable characters, you might not enjoy this. If you think you have low self-esteem, I guarantee Queenie's is lower, and if yours is as low as Queenie's, I hope to God that you go to therapy, because the way she like allows herself to be treated and treats herself is really awful, and it's really hard to read, especially the way she lets men treat her. After her breakup, she decides to seek out solace by having sex with random men, only men who degrade her and fetishize her specifically for her race. Every time she even looks in the direction of one of these men, you want to yell at her. And it's literally every guy she even thinks about hooking up with says some really weird fetishizing stuff about her blackness, and it's really weird to read. It's not only hard to read, but it will make you uncomfortable, especially if you're a black woman. So there's that whole aspect of the book. Even with that, her ex is no shining example either, which probably explains her relationship with men a little bit. The book tries to show you how both of them made mistakes in their relationship, and Queenie definitely did make mistakes, but her ex's mistakes were definitely way worse because they were racist. So there's also that. Queenie also deals with some stuff going on with her friends and stuff going on with her job. Like I mentioned, she works in a national newspaper and she doesn't really feel seen at her job. The way she deals with all this stuff, you really just want to shake her. So like I said, I can understand why people don't like this, but I really did. All of this put together show that Queenie is incredibly flawed, but she felt really realistic to me. Like I said, I don't think she was particularly relatable, and I do think some things were a little bit exaggerated, but overall, I felt like she was still a real character. I could imagine someone else going through the stuff she's going through in a similar way, and I honestly pray for them. I also really enjoyed the topics the book brought up. At one point, because of all the things Queenie is dealing with, Queenie starts to get panic attacks and develop anxiety, and it talks about how the mental illness stigma in specifically the Jamaican community, but kind of how in a lot of communities, mental illness is stigmatized, especially getting therapy is stigmatized, and I really appreciated that. And going along with like her heritage, Queenie has a lot of stuff going on with her family, particularly her mother, and the book kind of unpacks that towards the end. It also kind of normalizes going to therapy, which I thought was really interesting. Overall, I did really enjoy this, even though I told you every bad part about the book, but I really enjoyed it. If you think you will like it, knowing that Queenie is kind of I don't even want to say she's unlikable, because you do feel bad for her, and like I said, you want to shake her, but out of love. So yeah, so those are all the books that I read in the month of June. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any opinions about any of the books that I mentioned, please be sure to leave a comment down below. And also let me know what was your favorite book that you read in June, or just your most recently read book. Tell me things. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you can be notified every time I post a video. Again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Or just learning about each other's this is kind of an epic all of this put together shows that Queenie is incredibly